Alright, hi guys. Today we're going to be doing some printmaking, also called block cutting, block printing, or just making your own stamps. Alright, so there's a few different materials you can make prints or stamps out of, block cuts. There's using some of these types of materials, which are, depends on the brand, what they call them. Generally, if you just ask for linoleum or printmaking section, you're going to find these two different kind of things. These are around the same, they're just made by different companies. Then there's also a white one, and that's actually kind of one of the older generic ones, and it crumbles a little bit, so try not to get that one. Try to get one of the pink or gray ones. And then there's also there's a thinner one. This is what actual real linoleum is, and some of these will come with a kind of string mesh on one side of it, and that's because it comes from like the textile industry. This is what they've used on floors, especially in like places like submarines. It's like waterproof stuff that can give a little bit of dampening, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so eventually they started making a more quality one that is double-sided and it doesn't crumble as much. So some of the newer stuff, you know, it's worth paying a little bit of extra money to buy these nicer materials, and it's so much more of a pleasure to cut with. Not to mention, you know, it's after you've worked on some art, it always sucks for it to be messed up at the last moment, and you certainly don't want to get frustrated out of the little medium for good. So, and there's a bunch of different sizes of it. You can cut all of these, and then those are kind of the synthetic materials. There's also definitely traditional block cutting, which is wood. Alright, basswood makes a really good printmaking material, block cutting. It is a little bit, it's harder to work with wood. You know, definitely I would suggest the linoleum type of materials first. With wood, it's if you haven't done any wood carving, then you might have a hard time with it because you have to work with the grain. When you go against the grain, you can have tear outs, and it's just more inconsistent in general. But it's more traditional, it's more romantic, it has a different look, there's pros and cons. You know, it actually acts a bit like a sponge in some manners, and if you look at look up on YouTube some of the traditional Japanese printmaking techniques, you can see some of the ways that wood can be really special. These guys do, you know, these kind of gradations. It almost look like watercolor. You'd never think that it was a bunch of different colored stamps that made some of these images. So you can just get some blocks of basswood if you want. They're not too expensive when you get these little grab bags at your hobby stores. And this was just a block. I just kind of cut a little handle into it, and then you know, as you can see on some, I'll actually put a bit of a, you know, stamp thing on there. In general, that's just for fun. When they get to be larger, you're gonna have to just do a bunch of different maneuvering to get it to actually press down all the areas anyway. So just having a center press really turned out not to be the best thing. When I used to just have these blocks, I actually, on one of these, I did a double side, and it's the same, and I would print and then roll it. But it's kind of a waste of a big piece of basswood, so you can either buy thin pieces of basswood and glue them something with some wood glue, or you can order some of these basswood plywoods. And this one is actually, let me see if I can get information here. Okay, well, alright, great, dead air. Well, this is I got this offline from a printing company, and it's called Shino plywood, and it's really great, and it's super cheap, and it's like I think it's in the basswood family, the linden family, and it's a little more consistent than the basswood, and because they make a plywood out of it, it's cheaper. And it's just more effective to have this thin, and it's double-sided, so you can do definitely on both sides. So I definitely would do a search for that if you're interested in doing some of the wood stuff. Now, none of the stuff we're talking about today needs printing presses, and you can very easily drift into that category. And you want to be careful there, because printing presses you can't simulate on your own, and they're very expensive. So if you don't have access to one, you don't really want to go into like boxwood, which is really thick, and it's like really dense grain. And then there's also some artificial synthetic boxwood stuff. You can't do any of that on your own with just hand pressure. So if you get a chance to do them, definitely. But we're just doing kind of block cutting technique today. Okay, so and then also just wanted to show you real quick that a few different sizes that I have gone pretty big, definitely with the wood, with the basswood. With these, again, the pressure, it's not going to just be like a stamp. You're going to have to get in there and step on it and mash it all around. And I'll talk about a little bit more of the printing techniques with these later. But basically, in any of these, the larger you get, the more complex your materials and process has to be. With a little one, like the first the little guy, this is, you can use a stamp pad as I showed you, and that's the easiest way to go. Great way to get into it. Once you start getting bigger, even if you can find a stamp pad big enough for some of these things like this, it's not gonna print as well, and you're gonna have to start moving into the thicker, actually, and I mean these are called block printing inks, and there's a few different companies that makes them, and you can also get smaller ones, and then at that point you have to start getting also something, the brayer, which is the roller, and as well as some sort of surface that's really flat that you can roll it out on. So definitely start small and cheap. Just get a little bit, little pieces. Get a ink pad, and just make sure to juice it up well. If you're a wood carver, definitely try some of the wood stuff. It's like just this whole other world you can get into with your wood carving skills. It's a lot of fun, and that's how I got into the printmaking stuff. Is that I think it was actually this one that I was just starting my design and carving into it, just to get a basic relief. And before I started rounding out and really making it three-dimensional, I realized, hey, I could make a stamp of this and try it, and then just opened up this whole mess of a world. And now doing, I just have loads of stamps that I've made that have no real use. I'll actually make stickers with them and do bad things. So, okay, let's get started. Okay, so you want to sketch out your idea beforehand, or not, you don't have to. Just remember that it's going to be mirrored when it's stamped. So definitely, if there's any words or letters, you're going to want to figure out what they look like backwards. It can be hard to just wing it, if you accidentally. Some of the letters are harder than others to do backwards. And if you'd like, you can do a transfer, get some transfer paper. If you really want to have some good control, these will definitely take a bit of a transfer. You can even do it with some, if you want to put down a lot of lead on some paper, you can press it on there and get a faint image to go from. So I'm just gonna do a basic little stamp here that I use for my carving business, and I'm gonna go ahead and start on sketching it out here. No, okay, this lead's a little too sharp, and it's digging into that, so you don't want to do that. You want to use a little thicker. And I'm pretty comfortable with working with not having like majorly detailed plans, just kind of basic where things are going to be, and then also if I make mistakes, it's no big deal, you know. They have room to work with. Hey! Stop that right now! Get down! Okay, we had a cat problem. That was a bad doggy. Okay, you're going to want to make sure that you have a nice sharp tool. You can use something like this, or boop, boop, ba-doo, doop, ba-doo, ba-doo. You can use a tool that is more like this. Yeah, can't really do it. There it is, right there. Okay, you can use a sharp one like that. Or there's also this. This is these are V points or parting tools. You can see it's more defined on this one. This is just a smaller version of that. And these can work okay, these little ones, but with the rubbers, these linoleums, they're very, very soft, and that's like kind of what's hard about them. The challenging thing about them is they're so soft that it'll just cut like butter, and if your tool dives underneath where the two wings are, basically the tool looks like this on the end, right? Okay, so you got that V, it's like that. If you generally want to be carving about this. Okay, all right, there we go. This is your tool, this is what you're carving, that's how deep you basically want to go. If it goes deeper to here, if it goes underneath, then you lose control, okay? And it'll start tearing out the linoleum or wood, whatever you're working with. So sometimes it can be better to have a bit more walls to deal with. It kind of depends on your level of control and what you're comfortable with. The biggest problem with the bigger V tools, why you don't just get a huge V tool and use it for everything, is that the bigger they get, they're not actual points, that it's actually a very small curve at the bottom. So, you know, a 1mm tool will basically look like this, whereas a big one may start to look like this. So you're not actually getting the same point. You know, if you're just using this to barely go in there, you're actually getting a curve instead of a small V. So it kind of depends on your style and what you like. They're always selling the U ones, which are called veneers. I don't generally use them ever because they don't make sharp corners. It makes this round, weird, like glummy thing, and it just doesn't look, I don't like the way it looks. So we'll do a little bit of both of these. Definitely want to, you know, do strop up. Sharpen up everything. If you don't have any tools, you can get the cheap, there's that flex cut kit. Here, it comes in like this type of thing, and then it'll come with a few tools, you know, that you can use, that kind of deal. This was the large one. There's a few that aren't in here right now, but there's two that come with 4. There's one that's for carving, and there's one that's specifically for block cutting, and that one, of course, would be decent. You can also just get a single V tool, kind of get a medium one, to maybe like a millimeter, or like maybe a 2-3mm V tool, and get like a quality one. This is Swiss made by File, which is they make great stuff. They're pretty expensive though. You know, you can get a whole set of some other tools for where you get these. They're definitely worth it. But if you want to get on the net, there's some great old tools. If you can ever get the Dostra set, these are German made, and they're really great. I don't see them a whole lot. I see these. These are the Grumbusher. I'm not sure how you say it. They don't make them anymore. They make other paints or something. But they make an old set of wood block cutting tools, and these are pretty decent. They're very light and thin. They're kind of only good for block cutting, definitely, and like with linoleum. And Henry Taylor, the Acorn tools, those are also very high quality. All those are pretty expensive though. You can maybe get away with some of the speedball tools with these materials. Not really for wood, but if you needed a cheap place to start, you could go there. But I would definitely suggest trying at least going with the flex cut, because they come razor sharp. It'll give you something to start with, and then start buying more quality tools one by one that are either the File, Henry Taylor, Ashley Isles. The list goes on. Stubai. Okay, so let's get down to business here. Okay, yeah. So, this kind of printmaking, block making, when you want a black line, say we're printing on white paper with black ink or dark ink, if you want a line like this, you have to carve out the sides around it to make that line. Okay, so you're kind of doing a negative of it. So you don't just go in and carve your lines and trace it, because then you're going to have a black image with white lines. If you want that, that's fine, whatever, but generally, if you want a black line, you have to do 2 cuts for each one. And I'll show you what I mean right here on this A. That you'll start doing this, and you want to really control it. Don't let it go too deep, because this is so soft. Okay, and then basically you're outlining your line. And now I kind of planned to do that on these because I didn't want just line drawn letters. I wanted them to be like block letters, so that works out well. And if you're planning to make take out the background, you can just go through here and make a line all the way down. I'm gonna use my other tool for that because that's gonna give me a little more whatever. Yeah, you just go all the way down here, and carve that out. And I'm only going slow, by the way, because I'm trying to get control. This is very soft material. Very, very soft. Okay, and let's see here. Alright, so they're ready to go from there up to here. You know what? We don't really need this much technical stuff, so we're just going to use this and remove the material. How deep you go, you know, depending on your tool, you really only need to go a little bit deep, but as long as you're careful when you're printing. Okay, if you're a sloppy printer, then you need to make deep lines, because in a thin line, it's, you know, the ink is gonna go in there easier, basically. And then also something else to consider is a lot of times the lines will still show up anyway, and sometimes people like that. So it's good that if you can, especially in large areas that you're taking out, to make all your lines in one direction. And if you take a look at like the history of printmaking, you'll see that there's kind of different schools. Jesus Christ, there's different schools of thought and kind of how people did printmaking. There was a while where they only did you know, vertical or horizontal lines, and they would see, does this have a thing on it? And they would do the image by doing, you know, a bunch of lines, and then where they needed image, say if they wanted a circle, it would be thicker in areas. Okay, so they would be like this, and then they'd go deeper there, and then come back out, go deeper. And then there was other schools that would, you know, start doing cross-hatching for their shading. So there's different ways to do that. But if you stick with lines that all go in one direction, either, you know, even if you have cross-hatch, it gives it a very cool old-school printmaking look, because it's very easy to get to make these, and they'll be like really cheesy and amateur looking if you're not kind of forming your style to the medium, which medium meaning this specific material and how you're creating the piece of art. Okay, so we're gonna come and try to make a bit of a curve here. And you can notice when I'm curving that I'm not doing it with the tool. I'm turning the actual piece, and the reason for that is because this tool is a straight edge. It only cuts in one direction. So if I try to do it with my hand, it's also anatomy stuff, but it's gonna start doing chunks out instead. So turning your piece instead. It's also what engravers do. It's kind of where I learned that from.